This is Marketing from the Frontlines, where we speak with B2B marketers who are in the trenches, bringing technology to market. Here's your host, Brett Stapper, CEO of Frontlines.io.
Hey everyone, and thanks for listening. Today we're speaking with Dan Lowden, CMO of Blackbird. Dan, what's going on?
Hey, great to spend time with you, Brett. Looking forward to the conversation today.
I'm super excited and really excited to have you here because you have 8 exits under your belt. And what we're going to be talking about today is unpacking that playbook. So before we do that, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your background. So when we do marketing interviews, we like to ask the big question, why and how? How did you end up in this world of marketing?
Yeah, well, it's funny. Undergrad, I was a finance major. And then when I decided to go back to graduate school, I went to Rutgers. I got involved in international business was kind of the next step for me. And as I did that, I kind of became exposed to a lot of brands, big brands out there that were really exciting to me, that stood for something, that had a view of quality, and you wanted to be a part of that experience with the brand. And that's when I started to really love marketing. So my first role out of grad school was product marketing. That's where I started, and representing big brands like Sharp Electronics, NEC, IBM around mobile computing. And I just kind of fell in love with marketing and fell in love with technology.
What was technology marketing like, maybe let's go 20 years back compared to today? Like, how would you compare those two worlds?
Oh my gosh, so much has changed. You know, it was emails, it was calls, it was advertising in newspapers and magazines. You know, I hate to show off my age. My gray hair gives it away a little bit, but I mean, it was all really leading up to the internet boom, right? When things started to really go online. And it was a different world back then, but it was a lot of face-to-face. It was a lot of relationship building. And that has not changed. That is still incredibly important today. You have to build trust with your audience, with your customers, with your partners. So even though all the technology has changed to do marketing, right? Now there's ABM and, you know, you can understand intent and, you know, all these automations and AI tools out there that we use every day now. In-person, face-to-face is still incredibly important. And that's one thing that I feel like I'm pretty good at.
Would you say it's harder today than it was back then? Because I would guess back then, less competition, but also it was probably harder to convince people to invest in technology. Now, easier to get people to invest in technology, but way more competition. If you could choose, like, which world would you operate in?
Yeah. Let me just say that it's always been hard, right? Always. You know, there's always competition. There's always a lot of noise. You have to figure out ways to stand out. And I think that's what I've learned over the years with my marketing playbook that I put in place across all these companies is that you have to have a unique voice. You have to stand out. You have to look different. You have to be honest. You have to engage with people in a way that they build trust with you. And you have to do that really well today because there's so many automated tools. Everybody looks the same, sounds the same. There's lack of personalization still. Like these tools don't enable that, you know, like a human could. But you can certainly take advantage of the tools that are available today, especially AI, to do things faster, to do things better, more comprehensive. So, I mean, I find today with AI the most exciting time ever in marketing because it's changing everything. And there are marketing teams that are embracing that, and there are marketing teams that are not. And I think you have to. It's going to be incorporated into everything. If you do it right, I think it can really add to the personal experience that you can build with customers. And when you combine the best of all worlds, to me, that's really, really exciting and why I still love doing this.
Has AI totally changed the playbook at all? Like, have you had to go back to the drawing board and reinvent parts of it, or are the principles still the same, just the technology being used is different?
I think it accelerates things and makes things better. I look at it as a good friend. I look at AI as a good friend, right? Like our website, Blackbird.ai website. If you look at it, we're Blackbird.ai, where Blackbird is the name. So we wanted birds to be prominent throughout the website, but we wanted to have the AI type of capability or AI experience a part of it. So every bird is kind of a combination of real life as well as AI, but we think it's done really, really well and stands out above what anyone else can do. So we worked with a creative agency. We didn't do this without an agency. We had an agency work with us. They're called Punch Team. They're amazing. And we used the best of both worlds, where we leveraged AI to create some amazing designs and experiences to, in my mind, make the customer experience even better. And we stand out because of it. And that's just one example. We publish a lot of content, a lot of technical content. We leverage AI to help as a starting point to give us additional ideas, but we make sure it's our human voice as a part of it. And I think that's really, really important because you can't just rely on it to do everything. That I don't think is ever going to get there. Maybe that's 5 years down the road. I think the human aspect of this is still critically important.
Beautiful is not a word I would commonly use to describe a B2B technology website, but for anyone listening in, go check out Blackbird AI. It's awesome. Beautiful website. You guys just did an amazing job, and it does stand out. Yeah, I do a lot of these interviews. I do 10 to 15 a week. Everyone kind of looks the same. All the websites kind of look the same. Yours is very, very different. So definitely a good model to follow there.
Thank you. Yeah, there's 4,000 cybersecurity companies out there. You have to stand out. And when people walk by, if we have a booth out with the same type of visuals and branding, people stop and they say, that's cool. I want to meet you guys. I want to learn more about what you do. Right. So that's part of getting somebody's attention within 5 seconds.
Whenever I go to Black Hat or RSA and I walk around, I just think wow, everyone is saying the same thing here. It must be very, very difficult to stand out.
Yeah. That's my last company, Human. We were created and born in a science fiction bookstore in Brooklyn. So on the trade show floor, we created a science fiction bookstore and with posters and comic books and all that. And people loved it, right? It really stood out. So that's where I think as marketers, we have to be creative. It's still really important to be creative to catch people's attention. And there's a lot of room for that. Like you said, a lot of people, they all look the same.
Yep. Going back a little bit there to the AI part of the conversation, what specifically are you using AI for today? And then what's on the roadmap, in terms of marketing plans? How are you going to be using AI maybe 12 months from today?
Boy, that's a great question. I mean, we're learning new things almost every day, to be honest, right? We're leveraging all the different tools out there from an AI perspective, but we're also an AI company ourselves. So we're leveraging AI to understand what the narratives are around the world from a standpoint of the internet, social media, the news, to be able to understand what are harmful narratives impacting brands as well as executives, as well as positive narratives that might be helping building brand loyalty. So I think we're going to be using a lot of our internal tools more and more to help other companies, but to help our own company as well grow and understand, how we can be more relevant to our customers. I think 12 months from now, we'll continue to create great content. We'll continue to create videos and collateral and experiences that I think will be shocking to people. A website is not going to be a website like we know it today. It's going to be much more interactive, much more personal, much more engaging based off of who you are. And I think it's going to be much more relevant to what your needs are, instead of having just information available as it is today. I think we did a pretty good job as to where you can find things easily today, but I think personalization is going to come into much more play going forward. So I'm excited to see all the advancements in AI. There's things to be concerned about, right? Because, there are cyber criminals and nation states and threat actors using AI to do bad things like deep fakes and misinformation, disinformation, things like that. But I think there's a lot of good that we can put AI to good use and just improve everybody's experience and be more helpful to people going forward.
Yeah, my biggest concern with AI is how do you keep up? Yeah, I try to be attentive and I try to pay attention and I think I'm pretty good. And still every day I wake up, I just feel like I'm behind. You cannot keep up with all the tools, all the innovation. The pace of innovation is just insane. It's hard to fathom, I think.
Yeah, the pace of investment is insane, right? And I think that's going to cool off a little bit. There's a lot of companies that were funded in AI and for a lot of different reasons. And everybody's saying AI. I was talking to a CISO yesterday, and he said, if you're talking to an executive, say AI once. If you start saying it second, third, fourth, fifth time, you're going to get thrown out, right? So you got to be careful about how you're using it, how you're saying it. But I do feel the innovation is just amazing and accelerating. But I do feel that there are a lot of companies that have been funded that will probably not continue to be funded because they can't make money, right? So I think like anything, there's going to be some fallout. But I do feel like this is massively going to change the world.
Are there any AI marketing specific tools that are using AI that you're excited about? And I know, HubSpot has AI and, obviously ChatGPT is there, but Any specific marketing tools that you're just playing around with and you're excited about?
I mean, I think they're all out there. I'm not going to name any individually, to be honest, but like whether it's images or search or discovery or creativity, there's so many out there that we're testing, right? We're testing every day, and some we like, some we don't. So that's why I'll be careful about naming names. But like the big thing is keep testing, keep trying, and if something fails, okay, you learn from it. If something, excites you, double down on it. That's the way I'd leverage it. There's a lot of, marketing automation, ABM tools that are now saying they've added AI. I'd say right now there's minimal value to what they've added as more of a feature. I think it needs to be more integrated in the overall platform, and then it's going to be more helpful. And that's probably going to take another 2 to 3 years to happen.
This show is brought to you by Frontlines Media, a podcast production studio that helps B2B founders launch, manage, and grow their own podcast. Now, if you're a founder, you may be thinking, I don't have time to host a podcast. I've got a company to build. Well, that's exactly what we built our service to do. You show up and host, and we handle literally everything else. To set up a call to discuss launching your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. Now, back to today's episode.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about this infamous playbook now. So I think maybe a good way to view it is let's talk about the playbook as you've run it at Blackbird. So you joined Blackbird. What year did you join?
It's been a year and a half. So
Year and a half in.
Yeah.
What's that book look like? What are the first 30 days, 90 days, and like first year? What did that look like?
yeah, I mean, I think the key thing that I do, especially within the first 30, 60 days of joining a company is one, meet everybody. Try to talk to as many customers as you can, many partners, the investors as you can, if you hadn't already done that, and really understand what the company, what's the superpower or what's the gravity, as one of my colleagues used to talk about. What's the gravity of the company? What do they have that's their competitive advantage, that's long-term, that's unique, that when you talk to a customer, they go, wow, right? That's what I try to find out in the first 30 days. From there, I try to assess what they're doing from a marketing perspective, what they're not doing. I try to learn from maybe what they're doing. That's something I may have not done before in the past, but my playbook, I kind of know what works and what doesn't because I've been through it all, right? And you test and test and test, and things change all the time. So I try to get an assessment of that. And then seriously, within 30 days, I'll say, here's my playbook. And I will publish a playbook and present it to the entire company. I want them to know, here's the plan, here's the strategy. And you have to start with, this is what I always start with, is what is the main message of the company to the public, right? And this is where at Blackbird, we said, okay, we're going to be all in with what we call narrative intelligence or narrative attack. So we start with one sentence. We protect organizations from narrative attacks that cause financial and reputational harm, right? And if you don't know what narrative attacks are right away, I get it. But people are like, I know, I kind of get this. I kind of get this. And then that first sentence, I've never had anybody say, not for me. They're always like, tell me more, right? And that's the goal. So we came up with that line for the company. The second line is, it's protection against misinformation, disinformation, deep fakes, that really can impact executives in the company or the organization, national security in a massive way. That's what we protect against. And people go, wow, I get it. So if you have that and everybody is in agreement that that makes sense to your audience, you test it, you test it, you test it, then that's what you build everything else off of. So, okay, you start telling the company story. And what I like to do is build a deck with the company story that tells the story in a unique way that captures people's attention. And it's done in about 10 slides. That includes how big the problem is, what the problem is, who's saying the problem is impacting them, and then sharing. We have a platform that enables you to gain visibility into these narratives, who's behind it, what networks it's on, how is it bot influenced, what are the cohorts and communities that are making it worse. And if you know that, you can make really, really good decisions, because without that, you're flying blind. And that's the story, the elevator pitch. Every person in our company knows how to say that, and people go, I get it. So if you have that, then you start building content. So my first hire was to hire a really great guy at a CBS News, and it's content. We had all these people in the company, threat intel analysts that had all these stories in their heads. We published those stories in our blogs, and we've, probably published 100 blogs around every topic, including Taylor Swift to the Olympics to cyber breaches to Silicon Valley Bank to, elections to everything that has a big narrative or lots of narratives that, people are talking about in the world and that people are really interested in finding out about. So content was my first hire. That's a big part of the playbook because you can't start ABM demand generation without that content. Okay. Once you have that content, my view to the sales team and the BDR team that we built is every time you engage with someone, you have to give them something of value. I get so many emails from marketers to say, hey, do you have 10 minutes for a call? Or did you see my last email? Or I want to demo this. I don't pay attention to any of that. But if somebody says, Dan, here is a report that might be valuable to you and your company and your team, take a look. Or here is a customer testimonial about how we solve this problem that might be helpful to you. So the more relevant the content you can serve up, that customer is going to look forward to hearing from you, which is a rare thing where today they're spammed, by hundreds of emails and lots of vendors trying to reach out to them. So the more value you can create in the engagement, the more trust you will build, the more likely they will want to engage with you. Okay. And it's more and more you hear about, companies do 70% of their investigation on websites and communities and things like that before they want to even talk to a salesperson. And that's true. So you have to make the content available to them. So you have that as a baseline. And then that's when I start working the other elements of the playbook, right? So, to me, it's then, okay, if we have all of the right content, then we can start doing campaigns by providing great content in LinkedIn, which is where we spend most of our time and energy. And it can be super targeted to our ICP, which is the Global 2000 national security organizations. And we're providing really, really valuable content to them. And our ABM campaigns, I will tell you, drive significant inbounds to us. It's fantastic. I'd say a year and a half ago, it wasn't that way because people were still being educated on it. But now that, again, the World Economic Forum named this the #1 risk globally for the second year in a row, executives are being targeted, brands are being canceled. There are cyber breaches and cyber attacks that happen where these narratives become critically important for people to understand. So the inbounds we get from our ABM campaigns, and we're creative, we use the same type of cool design that you see on our website. We give away reports. We're now giving away a Forrester threat intelligence landscape report that's really valuable to people. So that helps build momentum for us. Then we also do a lot of events. Like I said, in-person is still important. We do local events, regional events, and national events. Like in cybersecurity, we certainly do RSA. We do Black Hat. We're going to be at Black Hat Asia. We were at Black Hat Las Vegas last year, where our friend from NATO presented in front of 1,000 people. Here's how misinformation, disinformation, narrative attacks are impacting geopolitical zones around the world. And he used our dashboards, our product, our platform in 8 of his slides because we enable them to gain visibility into these type of attacks. So that to me is like perfect, right? The customer, they presented it in front of 1,000 people at Black Hat. You gain immediate credibility. Then you push that type of content out that people want to see. They want to know what NATO's going through, especially in these days and times. So events are really, really important. We do a lot of webinars. We just did a webinar yesterday with PR Week, with Verizon, with Nestle, and with our CEO. And it's all about how do you protect the brand and how do you protect your company from these type of attacks. So yes, we serve the cybersecurity community, but we also serve public relations, crisis communications customers as well. And a lot of times they're part of the same company. So those type of webinars are really, really important. And then we're going to be doing a security week webinar in the early part of March around executive protection. And we'll be doing that with Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, who's a former CISO of AT&T, and another guest speaker. I won't mention it now, but it'll be coming out shortly. So that builds credibility, all those experiences where we come up from. And then, finally, we're a part of communities like SciNet. SciNet is a CISO community. It's run by a wonderful family, and there's hundreds of CISOs that are a part of it, that they're trying to learn best practices, learn from each other, And we were named Signet 16, which is one of 16 startups out of 300 that these CISOs agreed, we're addressing a big problem and that we're doing good work, right? So if you're a part of those communities, you build trust. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort, but you build trust because they realize, hey, this company has values. This company provides really important work and helps us be successful. So being in those in-person events are really, really important today. And then I would say industry analysts are still really important. Forrester, Gartner, as I mentioned, Tag Cyber is a big advisory firm we work with. We feed them a lot of our information, and that's why they start publishing around this type of content, and we get included in their reports. And right now, we don't pay Forrester or Gartner anything, which is every company I've worked with in the past, we've done that at some point in time, and we probably will here again. But they're so interested in the topic that we keep feeding the analysts the right information. We help them and educate them on the problem and what's going on out there that they want to write about us. So a threat landscape report from Forrester, as I mentioned, just came out and we're included in it. And out of 29 threat intel vendors, we're the only one that focuses on narrative intelligence, and it sets us apart. So they're using our language, and that's really helpful to us and builds credibility. There are some companies that will not buy your product unless Gartner, Forrester say anything about you. And then just finally, press coverage, awards are still important. We're interviewed by a lot of companies, a lot of organizations like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Security Week, and the like. And that builds a lot of visibility for us. And the last thing I'll say, Fortune has been a wonderful group to engage with. We won a Impact 20 award about a year ago, and we were recognized for AI and protecting against this massive problem. Then we got interviewed by their CEO. Our CEO got interviewed by their CEO on a podcast, which was amazing. And then we've been invited to event after event to highlight and talk about this problem in front of a massive audience, which drives customers, investors, and the like, right? So I guess I'll finish. I know I've been going off for a lot, but when you combine all those things together, that is a strategy and execution where you're leading the industry in lots of different directions where people hear about you from all sides of, the circle. And that puts you in a position to win and create value for the company and success for the team. And that's what I do. And that's what excites me.
This show is brought to you by the Global Talent Co., a marketing leader's best friend in these times of budget cuts and efficient growth. We help marketing leaders find, hire, vet, and manage amazing marketing talent for 50 to 70% less than their U.S. and European counterparts. To book a free consultation, visit globaltalent.co.
When we think about that overall playbook, what have been the biggest iterations that have happened? Can you think through maybe 2 or 3 big iterations that have changed how you approach things?
Yeah, one thing you got to realize is when COVID happened, the playbook you had to throw out the window and start all over, right? So I have to mention that. But, that's where digital became so important, and it continues to be so important. But then, when COVID ended and you could start meeting face to face again, that did come back in a big way because it's still really important. But that completely changed everybody's playbook overnight, right? Wow, you only can communicate digitally from here and through Zoom and the like, right? So it pushed us. We learned from that and it made us better. Let me just say that. I would say things like intent, being able to understand intent is really important. We work with a couple of vendors that enable us to understand, hey, this group seems to be interested in this topic, right? So our ABM campaigns can be very catered to what their needs are and be much more relevant to what they're looking for. So it's more helpful to them, and our marketing is more supportive of what their needs are. So intent was, I think, a big change, which has been really, really helpful. I also think things like GDPR and CCPA and those type of things changed everything, right? Things have to be done ethically. You can't buy lists and just spam people, right? That really gets people upset. It's not good for anybody, right? Doing marketing right, ethically, not overstating things, not saying that you're the one thing that can solve all problems. There are companies that do that left and right. So I think, those type of things like GDPR and CCPA are good because it protects the customer and it makes sure there's an equal playing field where the marketers have to follow certain rules. And I think that's a good thing, and that's a problem. There's a lot of mistrust in sales and marketing to selling to technology because a lot of people overstep their bounds. And that's a problem. So we've got to kind of figure out how to gain the confidence of people back, that there are marketers with integrity. There are companies who do marketing with integrity, and those are the ones you want to work with.
Something else you've been talking about that I have to dig into, our audience loves hearing about category creation. A lot of times when I talk to founders or marketers, they say they're creating a category. They're not really creating a category. Yeah, they're in an existing category and they're doing it better, faster, cheaper, but they want to give it a catchy name. I think what's interesting here is it makes sense, right? You didn't just come up with this term. It truly is a new category. Did you know that on day one? When you joined the company, did you say this is a category creation play?
I think when I was interviewing, I was introduced to Blackbird through one of our investors, 1011. They're wonderful to work with. And they're like, Dan, hey, this one's pretty special. You need to take a look at it. They have a massive mission. There's a massive problem. It's not in cybersecurity today, right? It kind of sits in the middle between social listening and threat intelligence. And, I know that because I've been in threat intelligence for the past 10 years, and I know what they do and what they don't do. So when I saw this, I'm like, man, this is something I could really jump into with my playbook, engage with the entire team. And I know how to help do this. I've done the category creation or the category extension, like you said before. And I'm like, this is new. This is a new threat vector. And we talked to enough people where they're like, yeah, it is. And narratives were the main word. It's not an individual post doesn't really tell you much, but when it turns into a single post blows up into 10,000, 100,000, a million, and you have no visibility that that's coming at you from an executive perspective or brand cancellation or a cyber attack, that's new, right? And with AI tools in the hands of cyber criminals and nation states, that's new because they can now do this at scale very cheaply and be very realistic in their attacks. Right? It could be a fake press release, or it could be a deep fake video that impacts the stock price of a company, or it says there's a product defect, or there was a cyber attack when there wasn't, right? So this is brand new world. And that to me is opening for a new category. I'd say right now, we're being included in both social listening and threat intelligence, but there's so much gravity around narrative intelligence. It is going to be its own category. And our goal is to be a leader in that as possible.
I think the issue with category creation is that you have to create the demand and then capture the demand. Are you seeing demand now? It sounds like that's starting to spin up. Or sitting there, they were finishing their annual plans to say, we need something. We need a narrative intelligence platform. Are you seeing that take place?
Yeah. And again, I would say a year and a half ago, my first black hat, I've been black hat before that, but first black hat when I was part of Blackbird, we would go to CISOs and they're like, not sure this is us. This is pretty amazing, pretty cool, but not sure this is us. With all the attacks that have happened over the past year, half of our inbounds, and we get a lot of inbounds, are CISOs, threat intelligence, and they're saying the executive team is coming to them and saying, you own this. This is an attack on our company, on our executives. This is technical. You own this. Go find out about it. Learn about it. So that's why we've been educating the market over the past year and a half. And I would say 6 months ago, the floodgates opened where instead of us having to go out to everybody, they're coming to us to learn a lot about it and saying, okay, we need to get this in place and we need to make this a part of our, the way we're protecting our company.
What about naming? So if you just look at that category creation process, I think step one is getting clear on the problem. Then step two is having your point of view or your POV on the problem. Then step three would be, how do you name it? What do you call it? I think there's sometimes where companies, founders, marketers get the first steps right. And then the third step they get wrong, where they just give it a horrible name. No one embraces it. And then that kind of dies out or it doesn't work as successfully. How'd you get the name right?
Yeah, that's a great question because, things like XDR and whatever, it's like, you don't even know what that means, right? In cybersecurity, there are a lot of boring names, right?
Like SPM.
Right. It's like, only the small part of the circle knows that, right? But to us, this is always, the narrative kept coming back. We did all these tests and we said, hey, is it information deception? Is it, all these different types of things? And no, for us, it's about what's being said as it grows and as it, expand very, very quickly to, really impact an organization. And to us, that's all about the narrative. And we just started to use narrative over and over again. And people are like, yeah, that's what it is. And we use narrative attacks as what cyber criminals do, but it's narrative intelligence is the category of what customers buy from us. They want to understand the narratives. They have to gain the intelligence around it so that they know what actions to take when they're hit by it. So we're excited. That's like you said, it's not easy. When you look back on it, like, hey, is this really going to work? But it's being like everybody's talking about narratives these days, which is pretty cool.
What about on the Gartner, analyst relations side? You mentioned something there that I think everyone in the audience is, their ears are going to perk up. You're not spending money with them. A lot of founders that I chat with, they generally view Gartner as, a pay-to-play system. I know they swear that it's not, but I think that's the general sentiment that many founders, especially first-time founders, have. How have you navigated this world so far without spending any money?
Yeah, so I have a different view, and we definitely work with some customers who say that's pay-to-play. Hey, this isn't really helpful to me. But there are a lot of other customers who say, I can't buy you unless Gartner or Forrester include you in their research, because that means you're real and that takes some of the risk off of me. Like if I select a vendor and it fails, that's on me and I'll get fired, right? That's what the CISOs say. But if Gartner, Forrester, and others tag cyber, say things about you, hey, you have credibility in the market, it takes some of the risk from them. So I see both sides of it. For me personally, the analyst community is still really, really important. They talk to hundreds of customers a month, and the customers come to them and say, I have this problem. What should my approach be? How should I fix it? And who should I talk to? Right. And they have to be neutral. Hey, you can work with them and make sure they know who you are and how good you are and what they do. And will they include you in their response? Yes, if you do it right, but you have to earn that right. I don't think it's pay to play. I think it's pay to participate and you have to earn it. And that's my view. And I think honestly, the analysts have led to customers gaining confidence in putting new products in their systems, which is important. That's what startups are all about. Big companies make a bet on a startup. That's risky for a big company to do it, but they have to stay above the innovation cycle of cyber criminals. And big cybersecurity companies don't move fast. Startups do. So if you have the analyst community saying things about you, that's a good thing. It's also helped. I talked about 8 acquisitions. If we're positioned well by these analysts, companies who say, hey, I'm out to do M&A, I want to fill this gap, who should I consider buying? And if Gartner, Forrester say good things about you, that helps. And that's helped lead to some of the acquisitions that have happened in the past. So to me, building a relationship with the analysts, I send them a monthly update. Here's all the things that we're seeing, and they include it in their research. I know at some point in time, I will become a customer of Forrester or Gartner as the company grows. But right now, they're really hungry for information in this space, and we're really the only ones giving it to them.
I'm seeing now that we are over on time, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. We're going to have to bring you on for a part 2. I still have a long list of questions that I want to ask you. But one thing I want to end on, I know you do a lot of mentorship. I mean, this episode has really been a full 40 minutes of mentorship, but let's focus on your advice. So if there's any marketers, let's imagine they're earlier in their career, what's the top advice that you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, early in the career, just get in and learn. Like I started with product marketing and I learned product marketing and product management really, really well. And then from there, I was able to step into other areas and grow, right? And I've been fortunate to do that for amazing brands over my career. So get the foot in the door, learn a certain area, but learn other parts of the business. Like I learned analyst relations, press relations. I learned, campaigns, and I've learned, all the aspects of marketing over my career. And I think that sets me apart, that I'm both a strategy kind of leader, but I'm also a doer, right? Like I call myself a professional athlete within marketing because you have to, and especially in the startup world, you do it. Like I'm carrying, booth props to events if I need to. And I'm also deciding, hey, what are the biggest strategies we should employ as a company in helping the executive team? So, I mean, that's where get in, learn, and keep learning and keep growing. And then if you can, as much as possible, be a part of a company you truly believe in the mission, that you get up in the morning excited every day to say, wow, the impact we can have could be massive here. That's great for customers, that's great for employees, and that's great for you individually, so you can grow and be successful in your career. And I would say I've met some great people along the way. They become my best friends. So work really hard, build your own personal brand, but have some fun too.
Amazing. Great way to end it. Dan, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
All right. Thanks a lot, Brett. Really appreciate it.
This episode of Category Visionaries is brought to you by Frontlines Media, Silicon Valley's leading podcast production studio. If you're a B2B founder looking for help launching and growing your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. And for the latest episode, search for Category Visionaries on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.